Carolina Panthers made a decision to move on from a veteran outside linebacker and a few other players. We are here to break it down.
Brace yourself for the ultimate Carolina Panthers experience. Welcome to Two Growls, One Roar, the podcast that hits harder than a Luke Kuechly tackle. We're diving deep into the heart of Panther Nation, bringing you unrivaled passion, insider takes, and pure gridiron fire. From Wilmington to the cosmos, this is your home for the fiercest football talk east or west of Charlotte.
Welcome in, folks, to another edition of the Two Growls, One Roar podcast. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are following the show, because if you were following the show, I outlined exactly what was going to happen. We had a video come out 2 days ago discussing Adam Thielen and Jadeveon Clowney. Which one of those guys would be here in the fall? Money pointed towards Adam Thielen. We talked about Jadeveon Clowney and the possibility of him being cut. And that is where, if I was a betting person, I would push my funds. Sure enough, today we get the news that Jadeveon Clowney, in fact, has been released. That doesn't mean just because we were right and that we saw it coming that we're absolutely happy about this, but it was expected up to a certain extent. When you go back and you analyze where he was, his age, his contract, the Panthers needing or wanting to get younger, I also could make the case, though, that, when you think about this thing with Jadeveon Clowney, he could have been a really nice veteran presence in the locker room. I go back and I watch some of the film. Maybe I'll overlay a clip or two of this as we record this. We'll see. But I go back and watch the final week of the season, and sure, it was a meaningless game, but he was getting pushed all around the field. And I think there's a lot of nostalgia that happens here. And I know he was only here for one season, but we love the story, the South Carolina ties, playing at South Carolina, 2 states, 1 team, all those things. But he was up in age. Panthers decided it was the time to be younger and get younger at the edge position. And so that's where we landed. Now, that is not the only transaction that happened. We're going to break down everything, including the news about Jonathan Brooks and his future. Surprise, surprise, we are not going to see Jonathan Brooks heading into the season. He's going to be done for the year. And then a few semi-notable names, a few guys that I pulled for, are no longer on the roster. All of this, guys, is in preparation for rookie minicamp. So we talked about where the Panthers roster sat, around 81-ish players. They had to get the number down, had to make some transactions happen so that they could afford to bring some guys in. But I look at this as positive news. I think the Panthers now have the ability, with the money they saved with Jadeveon Clowney, which is around $7 million, to now go out and possibly get a safety, Blackman, or a cornerback, or both, and bring those guys in here, because we still need some help on that side of the football. But without further ado, folks, let's get right into the list. Let's break this down for you guys and get you all up to speed. It's pretty easy to do because there's not that much to talk through, but we will get you guys up to speed. So right out of the gate here, as I mentioned, Jonathan Brooks has been placed on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform, because it happened now. He is going to miss the entire 2025 season. That's not a surprise. That's not a shocker. I said when the injury happened this past year, it would be a miracle if he played, because he got injured later this past year than he did the previous time when he was at Texas. So the odds of him making it back is like playoffs and maybe even Super Bowl-ish timeline. It doesn't make sense to rush it. Like, let him fully recover. That's part of the reason they drafted ETN. It's part of the reason they brought in Rico Dowdle, and you have Chuba Hubbard here. So you're still sufficient, and maybe you throw in Raheem Blackshear if that's your guy as well. The Panthers are covered at the running back position. It is disappointing. I'm not going to lie. I would have loved it, but I also am realistic and understand that, like, hey, probably not going to pan out. So then a few other guys that we should talk through. On the list, a few other guys we should talk through on the list. We already talked about Jadeveon Clowney. Panthers choosing, they brought in 3 new additions. You talk about Patrick Jones, Nick Scorton, and Princely Umanmielen. 3 new guys, young, depth injected into this team. Now, there are some folks that are going to say, why didn't you get rid of DJ Johnson? And there's still a chance that DJ Johnson's not here. I've already talked about the class that we brought in, and going back and looking at him in particular, like, it would make sense if the Panthers decide to move on. He is a little bit younger, but not a lot. You have to think about how old he is as well. He's a little bit older player that was drafted around when he was 25-ish. So there you have it. Tight end, fan favorite to a certain extent, Jordan Matthews was also released. Jordan Matthews is a really good storyline going from wide receiver to tight end. We saw his work ethic. He really put forth a good push there, but similar to the Panthers, they draft the tight end, and so it's kind of hard to make the case, especially when you bring back Tommy Tremble as well, and you already have Jadeveon Sanders. So they move on. Dax Milne, who I'm not that surprised. Again, we talked about wide receiver depth. A lot of these, and it's funny, they actually have Dax on here twice directly on Panthers.com. But Dax no longer here. And then we get into an injury for someone that was waived, which was Popo Omave. And then they also waived wide receiver TJ Luther. We already talked about Milne and Andrew Rame, offensive lineman. I really liked Andrew Rame, the center. He had a few setbacks. In general, felt like he was heading in the right direction. He suffered a concussion in practice. That set him back. That was last year. And he was, guess the Panthers are moving forward with the plan that they have at center, and he's not a part of it. And then on the defensive front, Jared Clark. Not on this list, but as reported by Joe Person of The Athletic, as well as Mike Kay of the Charlotte Observer, is Colin Granger, the tight end prospect basketball player from Coastal Carolina. He was also waived because of an injury status. So as it sits today, Panthers.com is reporting that the Panthers roster sits at 62 players. You remember, we'll go down to the bottom. They've got a little clip here. 62 players on the roster. Yeah, you can see Colin Granger was waived because of it with an injury settlement. So it was called out here, just not on the official roster. But sits at 62 players, 8 drafted rookies coming in. Of course, would put you at 70. And then you roughly, based off of the classes that we've seen, there are close to about 20-ish undrafted free agents. I would anticipate with rookie minicamp starting tomorrow that all these transactions are going to become official. So I would pay attention to Panthers.com. That is probably the best source you can get unless you're following these guys on X and social media. Go out there, stay in tune with what you see. And again, these things will be official. They'll be posted. You'll get to see who the Panthers got. Because remember, the list that comes out very early on in this process isn't necessarily the list of guys that we're going to see here at the end. So there's change that happens from what's initially reported, hey, so-and-so is going to sign with so-and-so team. Not always the case. Things shake out, but in general, we have a good idea of what the class is going to look like. We've already broken all the guys down, so you should be prepared. And we're actually excited here to have football back, rookie minicamp. Then we'll get into OTAs. We're in voluntary workouts right now, and then minicamp is right around the corner. And speaking of minicamp, how about the Los Angeles Rams taking their minicamp this summer, mandatory minicamp, to Hawaii? Quite the experience there. I wouldn't mind packing up and going to Hawaii for a little minicamp, a little bit of football, if that's where I had to go do it. Like, hands down, yes. So, folks, that does it, man. That is the state of the Panthers roster. I kept saying, if you followed me, I was like, at some point, something's got to give based off of where this thing sits. It just made sense that this was the move. Now, when I say makes sense, it makes sense from a business standpoint. It makes sense from a financial standpoint. Maybe not from a football standpoint if you're a big fan, because Clowney was one of the few bright spots. I know he wasn't top-end talent. He had 5.5 sacks. He did get pressure. He didn't quit. He played the whole season. I know he battled some injuries. but he felt like a guy that could anchor your room and help these younger guys develop. But maybe the Panthers sat back and said, you know what? We need to take this money from here and go give it to another guy or two to help us out in other areas where we feel at outside linebacker edge, we actually have a pretty good room. So anyways, folks, that's going to do it for today's episode. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, it's Carolina Dad. Y'all have a good one.